everyone, it's Desiree, and I'm here with part 2 from the My Monthly Hero December 2017 kit. And again, I made backgrounds for part 1, and this die is going to be the focal point of the majority of the cards. I also used the sentiments. This stamp set, this card kit was really difficult for me. The stamps were beautiful, but I just wasn't getting inspired for this time. So we're going to use each of the backgrounds, and we're going to make 10 cards now. So I took the first background, so we'll do them in order in which I made them. And I had that die in my stash, and it's a Spellbinders die. There's a nested series, so I'll make sure that I link below. I used the sentiment Life's an Adventure. And I used my Champagne Recollections embossing powder to heat set that. I'm going to prop this panel up with some double-sided foam tape. And now I'm going to use that die again to cut the side of the sentiment. I used my Lawn Fawn Everyday Sentiment banners, but I wanted the sentiment to curve along the edge of the die cut that I had there. I didn't want it to go off the side of the card or anything for once. Usually I do that. So very simple, making the background the star of the card. And that's what a lot of these cards are going to do. So for background number 2, we have the craft with the white pigment. I'm going to use the outer portion of that die. And now I'm going to line this area with glue. Yep, we're going to make a shaker card. And what I'm going to adhere first is a piece of white tulle. For some reason, I think because of the design on the die, excuse me, the tulle, I really liked pulling in the tulle. So you're going to see that a couple times as well. So I wanted to adhere that down first. And then I'm also going to adhere down a piece of the acetate. I still wanted the slick surface. I have made cards before. I know Jennifer McGuire showed this a while ago using tulle as a pocket for sequins, and it does work. But I still wanted to have the acetate sitting there against the sequins. So we're going to build with a double layer of foam tape. And I'm going to be using my Doris Iridescent. You know, y'all know I love my iridescent sequins. And the other ones that I'm using is Doris Confetti Iridescent. It's kind of cool, perfectly flat, and I think they're great for shakers. So I found that, I forget where I found them, but I'll be able to, again, I'll link them below. So I'm using a piece of craft cardstock cut to the same size. Again, all of these panels were cut and for the most part kept the same size of 3 3/4 and 5. So I cut the backing the same size, and I'm going to adhere that onto my 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 top folding card base. And of course I'm having a problem with that. There we go. So we're going to set that down. So you can faintly see the tulle. I just really liked the look of it. I think it accented the design that's sitting on the craft paper. I'm going to use the sentiment, Another Day in Paradise. I got a new cutter so that I can cut straight lines on my sentiments. Yay, this is smaller, a lot easier to work with. Although I'm sure I'm going to be changing those blades a lot. But it's something small that I can put here and I can manipulate it a little bit better. So I'm going to adhere this sentiment along the bottom and just trim at each end so that it's even with the panel that we put on there. And I think it's really pretty. Again, simple background being the focal point. So the next background is the clear gold sparkle embossing powder from Recollections. I have a piece of gold metallic from my stash. And again, I'm using dies from my stash, which again are Spellbinders. I believe I've used these before in a previous video. Again, they'll be linked. And I cut a large, 2 different sizes, and I'm going to tilt the background section on top of the gold metallic. And then I use the palm tree die. And I cut them out, and I used a black alcohol marker. The beauty of using a black alcohol marker is it's a solid coverage when it comes to those. You could also use a Sharpie marker. That'll give you the same thing, because Sharpies are actually alcohol markers, believe it or not. So I cut 3 of those. Again, gotta have my 3s going on there. And I'm just going to position these off of the corner of these 2 small panels, making sure that since I propped the one on foam tape, we've got some foam tape down at the bases or when they're overhanging from those sections, so that they'll stay even on the card base. Once they're set, I'm actually going to pull in a white gel pen. So I'm kind of pulling in some of my art journaling tips that I've learned from other YouTubers, and I'm just going to accent the palm tree. Just give it some highlights so that it's not just that, dead on black sitting on there. Not that I don't like that, I do. Again, it's different, but just to highlight the palm trees, to pull them out. I'm going to go directly onto the card base because, of course, I thought that after the fact. Right onto the bottom corner of the card base, and we're going to use the Gold Recollections embossing powder to heat set that there. And again, use the font, use the sentiment, Another Day in Paradise. So for background 4, this one background, I still want to work with it. I know it can work, but I wasn't crazy about it. I liked the purple, but wasn't too crazy about the mother of pearl on it. It's a very different shade. It's got an ivory shade to it. So I'm like, okay. So I took a piece of Bristol cardstock, and I'm using the Tiger's Eye ink from the card kit that are unique to this card kit. You would not be able to buy these individually. And I'm going to stamp the sand dune down onto what I just inked up. Didn't need it to be even. I wanted it to have some depth and some shades and so forth. Then I pulled in the tent, the canopy tent that was also in this kit. I'm first creating a mask for one of the sections of the sand dune. I'm just using some regular Post-its, not the full coverage, because I just really need the top, so I made sure I stamped it towards the top along the sticky edge. And I'm going to set that down in place, and I'm going to use my VersaFine ink to cover this stamp, and then I'm going to stamp it down onto the section of this panel. So a section of it's going to be hidden. It's almost like we're seeing it on, we're coming around the dune, so to speak. So it just gives it for me, it just gives it a little bit of character. I'm going to cut this out along the black line, and then I'm going to come in with my black soot marker and go along the edge to remove the white edging of it, just to make it a little more solid. So playing around with this, I know I want that position there. Again, that color was off. So I grabbed another one of my mousses. This is Cornflower Blue, grabbing a sponge dauber, and I'm going to cover it. So, and you can do that with these because it's dry. It's not necessarily going to blend, but these are transparent when you use them this way. So I'm going to be able to get the depth of the blue going through that. So it's going to resemble background somewhat. It's different. This isn't, again, these are just, playing around with it. You can tell I'm thinking, do I want to put the camel in there? Wasn't quite sure. But what I did like were the 3 smaller palm trees there. So again, I'm going to ink those up with my VersaFine. And I'm first going to stamp it directly onto the background panel. So I'm going to remove the sand dune, get that into position. And then I want to stamp it again because I just want to have the base of the palm tree in there. I didn't want that hidden in the back. Now what's going to happen is, of course, I'm going to get a double imprint, but I'm okay with it. I kind of like it. It kind of lets the palm tree section stand out a little bit more. So I was okay. So no, you're not having double vision. It's just the way that I stamped that. I'm going to prop the sand dune up with some foam tape, and I'm going to set that in place. I trimmed off the edge, and now I'm going to put this on my purple. This is actually the eggplant cardstock from Stampin' Up, 4 1/4, 5 1/2 top folding. And I'm going to set that down, and I'm going to use the sentiment, "You are my oasis." I'm going to use one of my Lawn Fawn banner dies. I'm going to curl up the ends, and I'm going to prop that up using some foam squares. And then we will trim off the edge of that. So again, backgrounds are being the focal point. And I really did struggle with this one, but it's okay. I've learned a lot of different things. So the next panel we're working with is the one where I use the Perfect Pearls with Versamark ink. Now, here's a little tip that I forgot to do. When you do these panels, you want to set the Perfect Pearls. And what can you use to set that? Hairspray. Now, I remember the days for Aquanet. Who doesn't love Aquanet? It's the best one. It's the least inexpensive, and you can just spray that onto the panel, and it'll set the Perfect Pearls. You want to do that because you can see I have that on the black. So let's get caught up here. So I used my Favorite Things stitch rectangle cutout on the panel. I trimmed it down. I then grabbed a scrap piece of paper and did a double layer of copper embossing powder from Recollections, because that's going to sit in the back of the opening. This is a black top folding 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card panel. I have my foam tape on the back, and I'm just marking the opening area so that I know where to put this copper panel down and set that in place. And then I'll set the background panel up on top of that. What came to me when it came to this also were metallics. So you do see that running through as well. You know, the mousses had a pearl effect, using a lot of the perfect pearls and so forth. I did some coloring with the vases. I actually used my Zig watercolor real brush markers, and I only wanted to use the two down there, and then I actually used one of the lanterns, and I have that sitting up in the corner. So I'm just sitting them in the two corners on the left and the right. And then again, I'm going straight down onto the card base, and I'm going to use my copper embossing powder again. And the sentiment we chose for this is Another Day in Paradise. So for this one, this is the one where I used the good old Distress inks and had fun smushing. Here comes my tool again. This panel's not going to be trimmed down. This is one of my favorites, I think because of the the colors that I used. My allergies are affecting me. I have some colored jute twine in my stash, so I pulled that out because this matched absolutely perfectly. I have a piece of tulle, and I'm going to tie that kind of in the middle, and then I'm going to tie a bow with this, and I layered this 3 times. Once the bow is set, I'm going to use my 1/2 inch glue dots so that we can set this down onto the panel. I want the tulle bunched up, but you'll see when we wrap it around to the back, we're going to fan it out. So it's like a curtain that we pull into the center with a string, and then it flares out again. That's kind of the effect that I look. So I lined the back of the panel with some score tape, and then I'm just flipping and pulling, stretching the tulle along the top. And then on the other side, it's still staying bunched on there. Now, since I have all of that awesome score tape, we can put this right down onto a white 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 top folding card base. We're just going to fix the bow, and it's not going to get super tight with this type of jute that I have. So I'm just squeezing some art glitter glue in there, and then fanning out the bow, and that'll actually hold that in place. So you just get the sense of the tool coming in on both sides. I'm using the sentiment, "You Are My Oasis," with my VersaFine Black. And I'm using the smaller nested die from the die that I used on the first card. I love these dies. They really, in my mind, they really did match, what the stencil was doing, and if I used the other die. So I just placed that underneath the tool. So number 7, so this is the watercolor background when I used my Koi watercolors and then set the stencil down onto the wet paint and let it dry. So I found a gold metallic from my stash. I used again the cutout for that die there, propped it up with some foam tape, and then I trimmed that down so that it'll sit just in the back of that. I did not want to lose the details of how this watercolor went with the stencil being set on top. Now I'm just deciding what color background. I was going to go with a blue, thought too much, so we went with a white. I'm applying some tape runner. My husband for Christmas got me some awesome tape runners. He said he found them on Amazon. I have to look them up. They're working okay. And I'm going to set that down, but before I do, you saw that finger wiggle, that means I'm thinking. I'm grabbing an ivory and gold twine. Got it, of course, from Michaels, from their Christmas collection. And I'm just wrapping this along the bottom just to add a little bit of texture to the card. We have dimension. And just wrapped it a bunch of times. And then I'm going to put a piece of score tape on top of that so that that will adhere to my card base. And it won't shift because I'm not sure if the tape's on the other side, but just to make sure. And then I'm going to grab some more and create a bow and put that at the top. I'm getting better at bows. Still won't show it because it's still painful, but I am getting better at bows. I'm going to adhere this bow with some of my mini glue dots and just trim up the edges. Now what's great too with these cards, you can see you can create them and just set them aside and then pull in your own, sentiments. I mean, these could become thank you. These could become, these are kind of like Valentine's or, love, togetherness types of sentiments. You could use, a hello. So you could just do these cards and set them aside. I chose Another Day in Paradise, again, using that smaller nested die from the Spellbinder set. So for card background number 8 and card number 8, this is how the glass bead texture paste from Faber-Castell dries. It's absolutely gorgeous. So you can see I have the point. I'm not trimming this card at all. I want to keep it to 3 1/4 by 5. And I used silver embossing powder and the sentiment, "You light up the night." Yes. The 2 smaller edge dies that I used there were from Sunny Studios, and they are corner dies. So I brought those to use a pen, and I combined the 2 so that it would cut and put a stitch line on it. I'm grabbing my Ranger white enamel dots, and I'm just going to put them all throughout to resemble stars throughout the glitter stars, and then grabbing my white gel pen. Just adding more dots to that card. That is simple. For card number 9, this is one of my favorite. As a matter of fact, I think this is my favorite background. So I grabbed a piece of scrap cardstock, and I'm using the pink tourmaline ink, I believe. Had to say that slowly. And I'm just trying to do a simple gradient on this cardstock. I want to have the dark at the bottom and of course the light towards the top. I also use the other die to cut out the center, the fancy part, out of white cardstock as well. Now I'm coming in with the ruby, and I'm making things fly across. There was a lot of things that flew this day, or dropped, and I'm just adding a little bit of shading down onto the bottom and dragging it up through the top. So it's close to what the background is, but again, it's going to give that color difference. so that it'll stand out. Once I have that die cut, I'm going to adhere the fancy die part up on top of that. And it's going to go directly down onto that. You can see I used the larger of those nested dies from Spellbinders to cut out a piece from vellum. So I just wanted to soften the area at which this center focal die is going to sit, but I didn't want to cover the whole background. So I'm using the 1/2 inch glue dots to set the vellum down. Doesn't matter because we're not going to see it because this die is going to cover where we put them. I dug into my brads and found a perfect jewel brad. I'm going to use my foam platform there. I'm going to puncture a hole through all the layers, and I'm going to set, it's actually a ruby gem that's sitting in there right on top of the die. I'm using Life is an Adventure sentiment, and I use the ruby dye ink from the card kit. I'm going to cut this strip out. I'm very happy with this. I'm loving that little trimmer. It's a nice size. And I'm going to set that down. I want to trim off the edges because I want to fishtail both edges of this sentiment, and then have that sit down on there. We are going to use our foam squares to prop that up. And I'm going to use my tape runner to secure that onto a navy blue. This is Night of Navy Stampin' Up! Cardstock for that card. For the last and final card, now this, I did not want to do anything. I literally wanted to take this background, slap it down on my eggplant cardstock card base there, and that's it. It's gorgeous. It's amazing how it came out. I was really surprised. And someone did mention, Jennifer McGuire did do that technique as well. I'll try to find that video, and if I can, link it down. But she is absolutely. So again, I did not think I created that in any way. I know somebody else did, but it was very different. But back to the card. So I took a piece of vellum, used that large die again, and I just had it coming over the top edge. Yes, I stamped some of the lanterns. I was going to have some of the lanterns hanging down. You know what? I just didn't do it. I just wanted this panel, even though it's simple to put together, very quick, I just didn't want too much to cover that up. I think the glitter does so much. I used the sentiment, You Light Up the Night, of course. I propped this up on some fun foam because, again, didn't want that to even get bent up. And I think the vellum just helps attract, especially with the points. So those are the 10 cards. This is how I interpreted this kit. There are many ways you could have interpreted this kit. If you separated, my mind was separating the stamps from the sentiments. I was getting blocked when I put them together. I do have some great ideas for those stamps for the next holiday season. But this one was tricky, but that's a good thing. We have to be challenged. We have to try new things. And this definitely made me do that instead of doing the same old thing. So I hope for those of you that have this kit or don't, give these backgrounds a try. Dig into what we have. It's absolutely fun. It's a ball. I had a great time. Got messy, but it's easy to clean. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. We have some great things that I'm thinking up for 2018. And today is January 1st. So everybody, please, I hope you had a happy new year. It will be a safe and prosperous year for all of us. And please, any comments you have, leave them down below. I will link to all the products that I used in both videos down below as well. If you missed the first video, I'll also add that link as well. Happy New Year, everyone, again, and always remember, be creative. 2018 is going to be a good one.